here in this section, we're going to look at what happens if we're trying to add integers. So we've got a -4 and a -3. What happens if I add numbers that are negatives? Or maybe I've got a negative and a positive. How do I handle adding numbers like that? So there are different ways that we can approach this. The first way that we're going to do it is we're going to use these integer counters that I asked you to have prepared for section 1.2. We've got yellows are positive numbers, so that would be one positive number, and this would be, or that you could just think of this as 1, positive 1, and so that would be positive 2, and this is, think of that as -1, and you could put 2 of them, and you've got, that would make -2. Alright, so we need to see what happens if we put -4 and then we add -3. Okay, so that means I'm working strictly with negative numbers, so I only need, for this problem, I only need my red integer counters. So I need 4 negatives, so there's -4, and then I need to add -3, so I need 3 more, only red ones. Okay, so -4 plus -3, if I add all these up together, count them up, I'll find that I've got 7 red counters, or 7 negative ones, which becomes just -7. So my answer here would be -7. So I'm going to put -7 on the back of my card. -7. So now I've got a flashcard. If I wanted to use a flashcard sometime, -4 plus -3 is -7. All right, my next one. This time I'm going to do -3 and +2. Okay, so my negatives, I need 3 negatives. So there's -1, -2, -3, and then I'm going to add +2, so I need 2 yellow counters. Alright, so make sure that you're reading these as positives, not times. So here's -3, and I'm going to add +2. Now, what happens? We have a property of addition that states that addition is commutative. Commutative, let me write that word down for you. Commutative means, I can rearrange it. Commutative. We have a commutative property of addition. And that means that I can rearrange these in any way that I want to, but it's still the same thing. It doesn't change anything. So I could rearrange these if I wanted. I could do a negative and a positive like this. Okay, so that's a -1 and a +1. Well, what would happen if I added a -1 and a +1 together? -1 plus +1. What do you think that's going to make? The negative and the positive, they would cancel each other out. So negative, if I go, think about your number line, okay? Here's your number line. Here's 0, -1, -2, -3. If I go to -1 here, if I go to -1 and then I add 1 to it, it puts me at 0. So -1 plus 1 is just 0. Alright? So that means I can rearrange these things. So there's another pair. A -1 and a +1 together is a 0. So that's nothing. So every time you've got a negative and a positive, a -1 and a +1, and you put them together, that makes a 0. If it's 0, we know that means nothing, so you can just remove it from your paper entirely and not even have to worry about it anymore. -1 and a +1 together, that's another 0. 0 is nothing, so I can remove it and I don't have to think about it anymore. This is the only thing that I've got left, is that little red, that little negative counter. So we did -3 plus 2, and we're just left with a -1, and that's our answer. So -3 plus 2 is -1. Negative 1 is my answer. Okay, so I've got another little flashcard if I need it later. This time we're doing 5 plus negative 3. Okay, so there's 5 yellows, and I need 3 negatives. Okay, like we talked about in the previous example, these can be, I can rearrange these however I want to. I'm going to do whatever I want to with them. I can mix them all up, and I can put them together so that the positives and the negatives, there's a pair, there's a positive and a negative right here, and then there's another positive and negative here, and there's another positive and a negative here. Every time I've got a positive 1 with a negative 1, oops, it's hard to manipulate these things, they're kind of, it's just paper. So every time I've got a positive 1 and a negative 1, I made a 0. 0 is nothing. So that's, I don't have to worry about that 0 anymore. There's a 0, I don't have to worry about that anymore. There's a 0, I don't have to worry about that anymore. This is all I have left right here. So I got 2 positive 1s. So my answer is 2. 5 plus negative 3 is 2. There it is. 5 plus negative 3 is 2. Next one. 7 plus negative 10. Okay, 7 plus negative 10. I have 7 yellow counters for my positives, and I've got 10 reds for my negatives. Okay, I know I can rearrange them however I need to, so let's start matching up a positive and a negative. That's 0. There's 0. There's a 0. There's a 0. There's a 0. Get all my zeros together. There's a 0, and there is a 0. Alright, so all my zeros, I can just go, they're gone. Zeros are gone. This is all that's left. 7 plus negative 10 is negative 3 for my answer. Negative 3. That's it. 7 plus negative 10 is negative 3. So at this point, you should be practicing these on your own. Practice some of these, like 2 plus 4. You already know what 2 plus 4 is, but you can see it with your yellow integer counters. So you practice some of these on your own, and then the next thing we're going to do is our notes for section 1.2.